Hi there, Geoff here. This important video looks at the key concept of minimum efficient scale. Well, MES, shorthand, is a critical idea in microeconomics. You'll be using it in your exams. It basically is the smallest level of production at which a business can achieve the lowest long-run unit cost. So basically, it tries to capture the optimal scale of production for a business. When is a firm cost efficient in the long run? So it's basically the lowest point or close to the lowest point on the long and average cost curve. And beyond that, increasing the scale of production yields no further cost advantage. Either the average cost curve flattens or begins to nudge upwards because of diseconomies of scale. Now, a really important point coming up here. The size and significance of minimum efficient scale does vary quite a lot by industry. And that depends on things like production technologies, depends on the ratio of fixed to variable costs, so-called cost structure, and crucially, it depends on how big is the industry demand. So here is our long and average cost curve. When average cost is falling, you have economies of scale, but when you reach the minimum point, I mean, you don't have to be exactly at the minimum, somewhere close, within 3 or 4% is fine, then the minimum efficient scale has been reached. So think of the MES as the point of productive efficiency in the long run. Beyond that point, there is the risk of diseconomies of scale, where average cost starts to go up. And typically exam questions often look at industries where there are different minimum efficient scales. If you think about the huge number of cafes and sandwich shops in a town, often a small town might have several shops offering coffees and sandwiches and things. None of those are operating at a huge scale of production, although you might have branded cafe shops, Cafe Nero, Starbucks, Costa and so on, that obviously are scale businesses. Whereas with utilities, you don't normally have two water utilities in a town or a city. You don't normally have two sets of gas and electricity pipes going into each individual property. So household utilities, social networks, transport systems tend to have a much higher minimum efficient scale. And really the key thing is efficient scale relative to demand. Let's just quickly go through this because this is super important. When you have a high minimum efficient scale, in other words, when there's lots of scale economies, relative to demand, that suggests an industry that supports fewer, bigger, larger firms due to just the huge advantages of scale. So think about utilities, think about big airlines, think about global car manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, so on and so forth. Whereas when the MES is low as a share of demand, there's plenty of room for small firms to compete, to get to efficiency and compete with each other. So you tend to have a fragmented market. So lots of small artisan producers or small-scale farmers in a town or a city, for example. Restaurants are a good example there, independent restaurants. And then you have the mid-range. So typically retail consumer goods, there clearly are scale economies, but they're not prohibitive for new entrants. So you get some competition. Now, the important point, I've put it in red there to emphasise, technological change and changes in demand can and do shift the MES over time. So, for example, new technologies might make it easier for new firms to enter the market and achieve scale. That would make the market more competitive. On the other hand, platform technologies might increase the market power of some firms because they just become the dominant player. The scale economies are so huge. Think about businesses such as Google, for example, or Amazon. The scale economies are so large that they achieve a dominant position. Again, just quick summary here. So high MES industries, you associate that with significant barriers to entry, big fixed costs, big capital requirements. So high MES tends towards monopoly or oligopoly, maybe duopoly, because firms must achieve scale to be cost competitive. Whereas with low MES industries, the barriers to entry aren't as significant. That encourages competition. You often have I love that word, fragmented market, with numerous small firms, many of which can achieve a degree of efficiency without necessarily getting themselves a large-scale production. So this is a really key idea. If you can understand from this video the link between the MES and the market structure, that is something that often pops up in exam questions. So in some industries, the average cost keeps falling. We call this a natural monopoly. So one supplier can achieve those big scale economies, and the MES will be a very high percentage of total market demand. So with a natural monopoly, and we have a separate video on that, the average cost keeps falling. So there we go, a quick video. I hope you found it useful on the minimum efficient scale. Thank you.